delighted to be here. And when you said something about writing, Suchita, you mentioned writing. Someday I hope to bring a gentleman here. He was a very, very junior level functionary in the government of Maharashtra for many, many years. He is never married, and for 45 years he has made it his business to effect change by writing. His house has one folding cot which he rolls up, jisko walkati kehte hain. He rolls it up during the day, and that is the seating arrangement for anyone who visits him. The rest of his home is filing cabinets and box files. For 45 years he's been writing letters, and he has copies of every single letter that he has written. And he's saying, government bhi boond boond pani se wo patthar mein chhe ho jayega. And he starts at the bottom. So if it's a ward level issue, he will start with the ward. He will then go to the commissioner for that ward. He will then go to the municipal commissioner. He will then go to the government. And he has no problems. He's also got no distractions. But it's a remarkable case of a person, and someday I'd like to talk about the kind of things. His name is Chandu Paranspe. He was telling me once, he came very close to getting married. There was a lady, a spinster, in his office. He was in the pay and accounts office of Maharashtra government. He's retired now. And he said, "Mujhe laga ke, she's a spinster. Maybe we can give each other company." And he said something to her about Ghatotkacha or some character from the Mahabharata, and she blinked. He said, "That's it. I cannot marry this person." Next day he gifted her a copy of the Mahabharata, and he says, "God be with you. मेरे मन में जो विचार था वो वहीं पे रहने दो." So that's Chandu Paranspe. But this whole thing about writing, and that every little thing makes a difference. But it means getting people together. I remember really after we got pretty close to 10,000, and I said an old share which is, हम तो अकेले चले थे जाने में मंजिल मगर लोग मिलते गए और कारवा बनता गया. And that's essential, because while each one must do his or her bit, the writing and so forth, it is when it reaches a certain momentum that change will take place. And my thoughts are really influenced very largely through the conversations I've had with an amazing gentleman called Mark Comerford. He got involved with the internet in the very, very early days. I mean, he talked about how he had met Tim Berners-Lee to keep the internet open. He was involved with the whole original Arab Spring in Tahrir Square. Right now, as he speaks, he's back there tweeting, and if you follow him, you'll see the pictures he's uploading and so on now that Morsi is doing his number on Egypt. And a lot of what I'm going to share is from Mark's thoughts on this subject, because one of the things that he pointed out is that when you want change, the officially recognized media are very often compromised. And therefore the kind of support that you can expect from them is almost by definition limited. So I'm going to pick that up. And the first enemy, if you will, in getting support for a cause, getting people to act, is apathy. And there are 4 dimensions to that apathy. And again, as you said, it's not about just saying, but koi karta nahi hai. There is a reason why it's not happening. And it's, if we go down and understand why they are not doing something, and we address that, then there is a chance that something will happen. The 4 dimensions of apathy, the first one is a starting assumption of futility. कि कुछ होने वाला नहीं है, therefore कोशिश करने में क्या मतलब है? And that becomes the first barrier to even beginning to do anything about it. The second, which is also very interesting, is that while the action will be collective, the motivations have to be individual. खाना हम सब मिलके पका सकते हैं, लेकिन हर एक की भूख अलग मिटती है. And that individual sense of motivation is critical, so that all of us, in whatever form that are together, have to be individually motivated. We may act together to do something, but the motivations are individual. The third, and this is about who are the people that we can rope in who are likely to be able to do the most. And I'm reminded of my own involvement with Jayaprakash Narayan in 75. The simple truth is that students are not compromised yet. जिसके बीवी बच्चे हैं, नौकरी जाएगी तो बच्चा स्कूल की फी कैसे देगा? There are automatic limitants. Some of them may be self-imposed limitations, but there are also genuine limitations. जंतर मंतर में जाके मुझे अगर 4 दिन बैठना है, it's not the easiest thing in the world if you are in an employment situation. So to that extent, if we are able to bring in people who are, and students I'm using because they do not have this pressure to report to work tomorrow morning. So that's the third. And the fourth danger today that I'm finding is the symbolic cop-out, which means I go to the website, I light a virtual candle, and I go back feeling wonderful. See, mummy, what a good boy I am. So the first area of what are the enemies is this: futility, a sense that the motivation is not necessarily individual. The third, that because of other constraints, and you know what you talked about, it's very interesting. There is always a justification for that corruption. मेरे बच्चे के लिए अगर मैंने ये नहीं किया तो इस स्कूल में दाखला नहीं मिलेगा, बाकी का करप्शन देखा जाएगा, बट आफ्टर ऑल मेरे बच्चे को मेडिकल कॉलेज में एडमिट कराना है. सो यू बिकम द एक्सेप्शन, and by definition of course everybody else thinks exactly the same. So that's the third. And the fourth is this danger of the symbolic cop-out. The second thing I learned in these conversations with Mark was that people are not moved by intellect. People are moved by emotion. Therefore, whatever the cause, if it does not connect to us at an emotional level, it's not going to work. We are homo emotionless, not homo sapiens. And if we want to move people to do something, it has to be by recognizing that the button to be pressed has to be emotional. And therefore, even the manner in which we couch the message or the idea of the cause is not intellectual. Take a simple example. Mark was telling me about what happened in Tahrir Square, and that of course had one other component. There was the sense that हम इतने नीचे पहुंच गए हैं, what's there to lose? But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about my experiences with things where the sense is, where is the emotional connect? Because if you attempt to appeal to me rationally, I will find a rational cop-out. Save power because the nation has 52 billion gigawatts of shortage. And then I'm wandering around and I'm seeing this humongous mall lit up like a Christmas tree. And I say, मेरे घर में 2 छोटे से वो 60 watt के बल्ब हैं. मेरे जाने से ना जाने से बंद करने से क्या फर्क पड़ने वाला? Because you're giving me a rational argument, and I will find a rational cop-out. Very recently, we're doing some work about how do they set up homes? They don't care a rat's tail if the building is LEED certified. But they will buy a CFL bulb today because मेरे महीने का बिल कम हो जाएगा. Don't tell me about LEED building से मेरे जिंदगी में क्या तब्दीली हो रही है. So the emotionality of the appeal and to the sense of a personal reward in some manner or form. The third is, and because in many ways organized media are themselves compromised, is the need to provide a platform. I think you made a very valid point, that a platform for sharing and which effectively becomes a dialogue place, not a place, and even we were talking before this, not a place which becomes the soapbox for individual rants. I mean, each of us cannot arrive at that, Hyde Park. Each of us bellows his head out, galiwari galoj leke, घर चला गया. Not going to serve man nor beast. But where this exchange is encouraged, made possible, and then taken forward, which is the letter, what happens next. But nonetheless, it is important to have these platforms. Not all of them by themselves will work, but the fact that there's a Twitter, the fact that there's a YouTube, the fact that there's a WikiLeaks is essential to the degree that we can support it. We made a very valid point. The number of times that we use a wiki, ₹100 का donation usko de do, if you believe that that is going to help to keep that thing alive. One thing over there is the world's problems are far too many to try and solve. I talked about apathy earlier in the sense of a priori futility. There is also the issue of, if you talk about one problem, that in spite of the numbers, and we can talk about, I don't know what's the latest number, 100 million people on Facebook, or 300 on million, 100 million on Twitter, whatever that is, the multiplier effect that happens when this gets into the mainline mass media should not be underestimated. While this is doing its own thing, you will, after the Times ran the little piece on that. Again, without necessarily making any statement about agreeing or disagreeing with them, Kejriwal could have continued to rant at Jantar Mantar. He wouldn't have had 1/50th of the effect, except when the OB vans arrived. Now suddenly it has become something that everybody knows. And Arnab may bellow his head off in the evening, but the fact is all these people got to hear about it. I would say, I mean, on the day that I think more people watched Anna Hazare, on the day that Amir Khan went to meet him, than on any of the other days of his fast. Because that is the truth. And if it is going to help to get the idea into a much larger canvas, and if in India, I think pretty much everything, savere aankh khulti hai tab se until the moment you drop asleep, there is nothing that moves without a film star. खाना हजम नहीं होता लोगों का, आज प्रियंका चोपड़ा को नहीं देखा रहे, मेरा खाना नहीं आता हुआ. So it's so completely upset, but the truth is that is how it is. And I for one have no problem if Priyanka Chopra arriving here right now would have meant another 400 people coming. After a while उसके ऊपर एक गनी साइड डाल देती, चल बनाओ इसको. But if it is going to help us get people, so be it. Because I think what he pointed out very importantly was, and facilitation. He said one of the most useful things that they did was hand out mobile phones with video capability in Cairo. He said because a lot of the people who were there simply did not have that equipment. And he said for every one phone that we gave away 6 sets of batteries. Because I'm not sure if he can get the batteries charged. But having done that, that video got picked up. Now it's going to be on BBC. Next thing you know, the entire world knows about it. So suddenly, Tahrir Square has now become something that the world knows about. And I just want to leave this as a thought that if we find that at a certain point a viewer stroke news generator worthy personage needs to be used, so be it. Because we need to keep that check. मुझे कोई religious या धार्मिक objection नहीं है प्रियंका चोपड़ा से, और उसके आने से अगर कुछ मदद होती है, so be it. The other thing that has changed, and it's very important, Divyashi was just telling me about an experiment he was doing about what happens to your rankings and the role of whether you've got a photo in that story or not. I have lost track of the numbers and the number of Instagram pictures that get uploaded on a daily basis. But the fact is we have become a visual society. And I think we need to keep that somewhere at the back of the mind. Twitter places a certain limitation on words by virtue of the number of characters itself. But I think sometimes we miss out on the power of the images. Because I mentioned earlier the emotional connect and a picture, I mean not the cliche, not to ignore the cliche, but it is worth 1,000 words. And besides, nobody wants to read the 1,000 words anyway. But the power of that picture, so whatever it is that is done, will have an enormous, I mean, I remember all the news items or the news that one would hear would not have had the same effect as watching the water cannons when Kejriwal and company went outside the Prime Minister's residence. Suddenly it gains a reality which words do not possess. And to that extent, whether it is the ALMs working about the pavement, whether it is the dogs issue, whether it is, I think pictures of the people, and that's what Manthan did all those years ago. It suddenly made real कि ये आनंद में हो क्या रहा है. So the use of pictures, I think, is an enormous thing that we should not forget. And look at all the things. There are definitive images that are in our minds. Tiananmen Square continues to remain because of that one man standing with his 2 bags in front of that column of tanks. Bhopal remains alive. That one picture of Pablo Bartolomeo's and the single eye of that child under the debris. Going even further back, and a more happy occasion is the naval guy back after World War II. The life picture about kissing that girl after coming back from the war. There are definitive images, and to the degree that we become more adept in using the image, we will, I suspect, be able to get more traction in getting this support. Lastly, I think you pointed out something very, very important. There is a long-term goal that you have in mind, but human beings need small wins, and they need them fairly quickly. Being from advertising, I can't resist giving you that image, but there was a thing for a mutual fund, as it happens in the UK, and it talked about it. So in the commercial, you saw 2 lovely young ladies, you saw the uniformed chauffeur, the great car, and in all the pictures you could not see who was the gent sitting between those 2 ladies in the back. You could see the champagne being poured and all the rest of it. And finally, they arrived outside this very fancy mansion, and one of the girls gets off, and then you see the guy between those 2 ladies, and he's about 300 years old. And all it said was, what's the point of making all that money if it happens so late? So the cause may be really worthwhile, but we have only a short time horizon for measuring the effectiveness and therefore feeling good about what we are doing. Is it worthwhile? Small wins, doesn't matter. We made a very important one. One school, one blackboard. But looking back at the last 3 months, I can say, एक को blackboard तो लग गया ना. हम लोगों के आने से पहले ये blackboard नहीं था. अब 3 महीने के बाद ये blackboard यहाँ आ गया है. So the quick wins. Again, I'm just going to reiterate the business of emotion. What is the emotional connect that will get these people? Articulate your emotional turn on, and then don't convince anybody. People who share that worldview will come and follow you, will join you. Third, in whatever manner and form, can you make it easy? We are now possibly the laziest stage of humanity that we have ever seen. I remember when I first encountered the internet, they said 3 click में होना चाहिए. आज कहते हैं 1 click में करो. वो आप फिर कहता नहीं सोच विचार करो और वहाँ पे सब हो जाना चाहिए. There is a limit to laziness, but that's how it is. So if we can facilitate, whether it's the video camera or the mobile phone with the video facility in Tahrir Square or something else, if we can facilitate, make it easy, don't make it difficult. Because then it becomes an excuse. अरे यार सी लिंक बंद था, ट्रेन लेट था, whatever. And lastly, set off many solar flares. Because you don't know what's going to work. Let's try lots of things, little things. Some of them will work. एक ही वो अभी दिवाली खत्म हुई है, वो लड़ी होती है ना, there are 500 pieces मान लीजिए उसमें, आपने उसको जला दिया. At the end of that burning, if you stop, you will find that there may be 15, 20, 30 which haven't gone off. But because there were 500, उस 470 तो हो गए ना. If you try and light one bomb, अगर वो फुस हुआ तो वो गया. There is nothing happening. So that would be my last takeaway from this. Do lots of little things. Some of them might give us that win. So एक स्कूल में ब्लैकबोर्ड लगा देते हैं, एक स्कूल में बच्चों के लिए यूनिफॉर्म देते हैं, तीसरे में कुछ और करते हैं, कहीं कुछ तो हो गया. That gives us the confidence and the sense of the whole thing being worthwhile. So I'm going to sum up and end with that. Okay? On the one hand, it must seem worthwhile to begin with, which means the emotional connect. And in result, even if it's a little thing, it's like a little kid cleaning up the room and getting a reward for that. It's a big thing because I cleaned up the room and I got this. It doesn't matter. Has he become the most clean person on the planet? Is he going to necessarily wash behind his ears tomorrow? Doesn't matter. शुरुआत तो हो गई है. So in the end, as in the beginning, हम तो अकेले चले थे जाने पर मगर इनका पीछा करते हुए और भी लोग आ गए. Thank you.